Let me begin with a sort of olive branch. Some of you watching this immediately and viscerally reject the title of the video. Instinctively, after those 5 simple words, the failing gambit of Tesla, some of you out there lose the ability to think rationally. Instead of engaging with an opinion on merit, comprehending the argument in totality, or providing contradictory evidence even, the blind allegiance that Elon Musk has artfully cultivated, which now surrounds his electronic vehicle manufacturing company Tesla, very often drives his supporters into a state of intense reactive denial. In true cult-like fashion, the only thing that they will ever trust are the words of the man himself. So rather than setting forth a premise here on my own, I think it's better to showcase precisely that. The value of Tesla as a company is inextricably linked to the concept of full self-driving. That is to say, RoboTaxis, or the idea of driverless automated car transport, without which it will face extreme market revaluation.
Overwhelming focus is solving full self-driving. So, yeah. And that's essential. And that's really the difference between Tesla being worth a lot of money and being worth basically zero.
Yeah.
So ideally, that will now serve as the video baseline. According to Elon Musk himself, the difference between Tesla being worth a lot of money and being worth basically zero is full self-driving, FSD. However, when properly discussing the failing gambit of Tesla, I think we also need to understand just how deep the history goes. For the sake of once again pacifying people who are unwilling or unable to process criticism of Tesla or Elon Musk in their minds, here's a compilation of 15 different times over the span of 10 years where promises were made about the advancement of full self-driving. These statements were made to the public, to shareholders, and to the media. They carried a range between 1 and 3 years in duration, with the common theme of stating that full self-driving, specifically containing zero human intervention, is right around the corner at every step of the way.
I mean, my guess for when we will have full autonomy is about 3 years.
3 years.
Approximately 3 years.
Yeah. My point is, when does it get to be where you don't need to be sitting behind a vehicle? I can have my 75-year-old mother who doesn't speak any English or doesn't drive be able to be transported from point A to point B by just sitting in a car by herself and being taken.
I think we're basically less than 2 years away from complete autonomy.
By the end of the year, you're saying someone's going to sit in a Tesla without touching the steering wheel, tap in New York, off it goes, won't have to ever touch the wheel by the end of 2017.
Yeah, essentially November or December of this year, we should be able to go from, all the way from a parking lot in California to a parking lot in New York, no controls touched at any point during the entire journey.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tesla Inc. Q4 2018 financial results and Q&A webcast.
When will we think it's safe for full self-driving? It's probably towards the end of this year. And then it's up to regulators to decide when they want to approve that.
I think probably by end of next year, self-driving will encompass essentially all modes of driving and be at least 100 to 200% safer than a person by the end of next year. We're talking maybe 18 months from now.
I know what we need to solve to make full self-driving feature complete. I think we've got an extremely good technical team. I think we really have the best people. It's an honor to work with them. I'm certain that we will get this done this year. I think it will become very, very quickly, maybe even towards the end of this year, but I'd be shocked if it's not next year at the latest, that having a human intervene will decrease safety. So we expect to be feature complete in self-driving this year, and we expect to be confident enough from our standpoint to say that we think people do not need to touch the wheel, look out of the window, sometime probably around, second quarter of next year. And then we start to expect to get regulatory approval, at least in some jurisdictions, for that towards the end of next year.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by, and welcome to Tesla's Q4 2020 financial results and Q&A webcast.
And this is, basically, I'm highly confident the car will be able to drive itself with a reliability in excess of humans this year. This is a very big deal.
Extremely confident of achieving full autonomy and releasing it to the Tesla customer base next year.
I'm extremely confident that level 5 or essentially complete autonomy will be will happen, and I think it will happen very quickly. I think at Tesla, I feel like we're very close to level 5 autonomy. I remain confident that we will have the functionality the basic functionality for level 5 autonomy complete this year.
Based on your current understanding, how hard do you think this full self-driving problem, when do you think Tesla will solve level 4 FSD?
I mean, it's looking quite likely that it will be next year.
Now, at this point, I think we are no longer trapped in a local maximum. And it appears, my best guess is that we will get there this year.
We'll have sort of a ChatGPT moment, maybe if not this year, I'd say no later than next year.
Wait, say that again. I'm sorry. You're going to have a
sort of ChatGPT moment.
Oh, you will. In terms of suddenly it will.
Yeah, suddenly 3 million cars will be able to drive themselves with no one.
You could fall asleep and wake up at your destination. You can think of it like individualized mass transit. We do expect actually to start fully autonomous, unsupervised FSD in Texas and California next year. We expect to be in production with the Cybercab in probably, well, I tend to be a little optimistic with timeframes, but in 2026, before 2027, let me put it that way.
That is a bold tactic, claiming that a product or service is imminently available for over 10 years straight. But then finally, as in June 22nd of 2025, Tesla RoboTaxis actually hit the market. Well, not so much, actually. Before going further, I want to take a minute to talk about the video sponsor, but that sponsor is also hyper-relevant for today's topic because it's all about digesting information. It's called Ground News, best classified as a news aggregate service, but the interesting thing that happens when you gather up all sorts of independent and mainstream sources, putting them together in a single feed, is that you start to see just how politically manipulated the entire news system actually is. Take these RoboTaxis as an example. Check this out. In the feed assembled by Ground News, they've collected almost 400 different sources, categorizing them by political affiliation. They give bias ratings, clarify corporate ownership, and have all sorts of other valuable analytical tools. But just take a look at the general headlines. Tesla stock in tailspin after error-plagued RoboTaxi debut from Futurism. Except a few stories down, Tesla shares soar after first RoboTaxi rides hit the road in Austin, Texas from KSL. Depending on what you choose to read, you get an entirely different picture of the exact same events, with all sorts of fragmented contextual information spread across dozens of different outlets, showcasing that if you choose to simply read or watch a single source of information, you likely have a completely warped perspective of current events. More context is never, ever a bad thing, and yet most online readers are never exposed to anything beyond their own simple echo chamber. Ground News is here to solve that problem. They have all sorts of additional tools on top of aggregating as many sources as possible, such as blind spot coverage or personal bias checkers. But for whatever reason you decide, if you click the link down below in the description or scan the QR code to sign up, you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan today. Again, link down below, ground.news/Echelon for 40% off a Vantage plan today. Big thank you to Ground News for sponsoring the channel. Okay, back to the RoboTaxis. June 22nd of 2025 was the Tesla RoboTaxi rollout bonanza of between 10 and 20 vehicles, invite only, restricted to favored influencers, stockholders, and mega fans. The service would be available for $4.20 per ride, which is a meme. The operating zone would be a geofenced portion of Austin, Texas, and the hours of operation would be cut down to a specific window with only favorable weather conditions. It's not uncharitable to say that they were deliberately constructing this launch to be as restrictive as possible, with only absolutely perfect conditions. Therefore, any sort of intervention needed should be regarded with extreme caution. That is to say, if you showcase something to the public with precisely calibrated perfect conditions, and still have examples of failure, many of them, the assumption must be made that those failures will dramatically increase in severity and frequency the moment the conditions worsen. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't even know if we should realistically be using the word launch in this situation. It's really just a highly scripted beta test, and seemingly in agreement with that, in the most hilarious twist of fate imaginable, the betting market odds for a website called Polymarket appear to agree with me. For those that don't know, Polymarket is a predictive betting market. You can make cash wagers on politics, global events, economic developments, you name it, with one such betting market pertaining to whether or not Tesla would launch RoboTaxis before the month of July. On the surface, one might expect that the answer to that question is already yes. Considering the beta test was released on June 22nd, it would make sense. But exacerbating this problem, in direct reply to someone on Twitter who stated that the chance of this happening was only 14%, Elon Musk replied on June 19th, which is 3 days before the launch, money-making opportunity. That's a fairly explicit statement from the person who presumably has direct insider knowledge, which immediately and very understandably caused almost $500,000 in volume to go flooding into this betting market, predicting that yes, Tesla would be launching their RoboTaxis before July. Just one glaringly obvious problem with that, because the precise terms of that wager, written very clearly on the prediction page, read as follows, quote, "A program that is restricted to Tesla employees, invite-only testers, closed beta participants, factory self-delivery features, or the mere release of full self-driving software for private owner drivers will not qualify," end quote. And as we can still see written at the top of the RoboTaxi brief page on Tesla.com, RoboTaxi is invite only. Elon Musk effectively caused a whole bunch of his most loyal cult follower members to quite literally just throw their money away on this betting market. Regardless, though, I do think that's absolutely hilarious. With the headlines now fully secured, RoboTaxis were on the streets of Austin, Texas, which is a win for Tesla as a company. Sort of. It turns out that the cars have a multitude of issues. Remember, the test is engineered in such a way that they will only ever be in ideal parameters. The geofenced area is small, inclement weather conditions are entirely avoided, operating hours are severely restricted, and the only people allowed to ride in them are carefully chosen influencers and shills. But even then, it wasn't long before videos began surfacing where RoboTaxis would break traffic laws or put their riders in unsafe conditions or speed or stop in the middle of the road and all sorts of other stuff. Here's a few of the more notable ones, but these are by no means the only examples out there. In some cases, the car would phantom brake and stop directly in the left lane of a 40-mile-per-hour road. In another case, the car failed to make a left-hand turn, jerking the wheel a bunch of times, and then just decided to try and merge in the middle of an intersection, causing the car behind them to presumably hit their brakes and honk at them, after which the car decided, let's just cross the double yellow lines and go to the next traffic light. Meanwhile, the safety operative in the passenger seat doesn't even react to the situation. I mean, there's not much that they could realistically do. But anyway, here's one where the car is stopping in the middle of an intersection, literally blocking a lane of traffic and then telling all the passengers to get out of it, after which it fails to start again, I guess, blocking the road for more time. And all of this abundantly showcases that even with absolutely perfect overall conditions, Tesla RoboTaxis contain a multitude of problems. Oddly enough, after these clips became widely circulated, suddenly a whole bunch of new videos began showing up, coincidentally called things like Tesla RoboTaxi executes perfect left turn, or Tesla RoboTaxi makes risky left turn in autonomous future, mostly just a few seconds long and seemingly having the effect of burying the example where it previously failed. I can't say for sure if this is an obfuscation technique by certain influencers to suppress the negative examples in a flood of more positive video headlines, but if it were true, it certainly wouldn't be the first time that that technique was used. Suffice it to say, the launch of Tesla's RoboTaxis is anything but perfect. However, in the interest of being fair, Waymo, Tesla's chief competitor at this stage, initially trained their own cars with human operatives in the driver's seat and the passenger seat, but also no customers. Tesla is quite obviously jumping that step of the process and going straight to the commercial usage in perfectly optimal conditions, but the simple truth is that this is nothing more than a PR stunt. With that said, let's talk about Waymo, seeing as it is, in fact, Tesla's main competition. The first thing to know about Waymo is that it's on track to be rolled out in 10 more cities during 2025 alone. It exists in multiple already. But much more interestingly, it is monumentally safer when compared to human drivers, a fact that I was completely unaware of when I started making the video. Summarizing data from 25 million miles of service, reinsurance provider Swiss Re in 2024 put together a data report that states, quote, "The study compared Waymo's liability claims to human driver baselines, which are based on Swiss Re's data from over 500,000 claims and over 200 billion miles of exposure. It found that the Waymo driver demonstrated better safety performance when compared to human-driven vehicles, with an 88% reduction in property damage claims and a 92% reduction in bodily injury claims. In real numbers, across 25.3 million miles, the Waymo driver was involved in just 9 property damage claims and 2 bodily injury claims, end quote. The release goes on to say, quote, "This analysis complements our safety impact data, which indicates that over 25 million fully autonomous miles, the Waymo driver had fewer serious collisions than human drivers, independent of who is at fault," end quote. But the much more important thing to consider is that this is a competing company that also happens to use entirely different technology. For the sake of time, I'll simplify the explanation, but Waymo, underneath parent organization Alphabet, which is also the parent organization of Google, uses a complex system of sensors and cameras, many of them, including something called LiDAR, for the sake of gathering maximum information for the vehicle. On the flip side, Tesla only uses cameras, as well as AI visual interpretation systems. Repeatedly pressed about this topic, as it turns out, Elon Musk has a very long history of not only supporting his own thesis, understandably, on which type of car is superior, but also outright condemning LiDAR as, quote, "lame in cars, it's friggin' stupid, it's expensive and unnecessary," end quote. For the sake of reiterating that point right now, in 2019, he said, quote, "LiDAR is a fool's errand. Anyone relying on LiDAR is doomed. They are expensive sensors that are unnecessary. It's like having a whole bunch of expensive appendices. Like one appendix is bad, well now you have a whole bunch of them. It's ridiculous, you'll see," end quote. That is the world's richest man currently attempting to make a competing driverless taxi, which is only just now being unveiled in a tiny, carefully monitored space of one city after he repeatedly condemned the idea of geofencing itself on more than one occasion, who is now stating that the leading technology, which is successfully operating hundreds of vehicles across numerous different cities already, completing 25 million miles of travel with 100,000 monetized trips per week at the moment, and substantially safer accident metrics compared to human drivers, the world's richest man is openly condemning that model. Yeah, Elon Musk, as much as the cult-like following pretends that this could never be true, is flatly wrong. While initially expensive, LiDAR is now massively decreasing in cost, as is true with most technology as it matures over time. From a research paper titled "Evolution of Laser Technology for Automotive LiDAR, an Industrial Viewpoint," published in Nature Communications, quote, "Over the past decade, LiDAR costs have plummeted from over $10,000 to the current range of $500 to $1,000. This downward trend is expected to continue, potentially reaching the $100 range in the coming years. Global LiDAR penetration now is in the order of 0.5% of all passenger cars sold. We anticipate a surge in the figure to exceed 10% as the selling price of LiDAR approaches $100, end quote. Seemingly the most prohibitive barrier holding back LiDAR as widespread robotaxi technology is evaporating. And at the same time, Waymo is scaling. As of April 2025, specifically in the San Francisco operating zone, Waymo now holds 27% market share of rides completed inside its field of operation. Most notably, that field does not include the airport yet, which would mean market share increases even more for them when that does become the case. But the trajectory here is very, very obvious, as Waymo rapidly gains traction while Lyft and Uber are actively losing it. The argument that Waymo can't scale, that the cars are too expensive and possess unnecessary technology, is a farce. The tech is rapidly becoming much more affordable. The safety metrics and crash data speak for themselves. The company has a first mover advantage in numerous different city markets already. And all of this flying in the face of every argument and every promise that Tesla and Elon Musk have practically ever made. Still, if the argument is about that singular moment, the ChatGPT style mass adoption wave where millions of Tesla cars will suddenly all become robotaxis at the same time, filling the streets with driverless options and earning you money while you sleep as they fulfill unsupervised automated rides wherever the demand takes them. If that argument is the chosen defense mechanism for Tesla fans, then let's honestly talk about it. I'll throw you a bone here. If that moment were to be real, if it really did happen, then yes, in that scenario, Tesla would suddenly have incredible market share, unbelievable earning potential, and a place in automotive history as the ultimate disruptor of an established field. However, if we harken back to the beginning of the video, the claim that 3 million Teslas would suddenly become autonomous practically overnight requires a very specific set of circumstances. For about 9 years, Elon Musk has explicitly been making the claim that all Tesla cars being produced have the hardware capability for full self-driving. In no uncertain terms, this means that when the software is capable of doing it, which it hasn't been for this entire span of time, but supposedly it's right around the corner next year for the past decade, these cars, all of them, when the software is capable, will be capable of running it. And since the claim goes all the way back to 2016, when Tesla models were using something called AP2, later replaced by AP3 and AP4, the idea of that industry-defining moment could allegedly be possible. Except no, it is not. AP2 as well as AP3 aren't capable of performing complete autonomy self-driving functions, let alone with actual regulatory approval, ever, which leaves Tesla in a position where if they had any intention whatsoever of actually following through on their promises, they would need to replace the computer, which is prohibitively expensive for them to do, as per Elon Musk himself, for millions of vehicles all across the country. Sadly, not only are they not going to do that ever, they also deleted all of their blog posts, conveniently removing the one which explicitly promised, quote, "We are excited to announce that as of today, all Tesla vehicles produced in our factory, including Model 3, will have the hardware needed for full self-driving capability at a safety level substantially greater than that of a human driver," end quote, which very obviously resulted in lawsuits, such as this one, represented by Cotchett, Pitter, and McCarthy in California that a lot of people have probably not heard of, which is still ongoing in the discovery stages right now, because the company and the man himself are making a never-ending chain of promises that they cannot and consistently have not ever fulfilled. I want to conclude with this. The topic is long and I feel that the point has been sufficiently made already, but before the end, I want to bring this up. Why is it that after a decade of flagrantly excessive promises with repeatedly missed deadlines across years, consistently misrepresenting the current state of the technology at every single turn, why is it that we finally have a scripted, tiny, influencer-dominated beta test at this particular moment in time? The answer to that question depends heavily on who you choose to ask, but I would assert that there's a non-0% chance that the real reason is because Elon Musk himself, during his tenure as the head of DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, appointed by Donald Trump, with whom he now appears to be somewhat enemies, which is going to cause him a whole separate set of issues, cut roughly 30 jobs at the NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, just 3 months before this test is now taking place. And of the people that were fired, quote, "Many were in the Office of Vehicle Automation Safety." Just to be as clear as possible, the man who owns a company, which is by his own admission heavily predicated on the concept of full self-driving in order to stay valuable, fired the people responsible for regulating safety of that vehicle class shortly before testing them on public roads after a decade of broken promises and consistent failure. That is the most obvious conflict of interest that you can possibly imagine. Obviously, I can't say with certainty that he's only braving it now because the agency responsible for regulating that move has been gutted by him in the particular relevant department, but I will say that we have a proven track record of Elon Musk saying things that are explicitly untrue, with more than a decade of misrepresenting progress across multiple industries. Meanwhile, his chief competitor has not only been doing what this beta now pretends, that is, small, geofenced, strictly monitored test rides, for years and years, but they've also done it, succeeded at it, and now scaled that business model to millions of people. It certainly remains to be seen whether or not the magical business model of Elon Musk, with the industry-defining moment of total dominance by Tesla, can or ever will come to pass. But after looking at the entire situation in context, I see nothing but failure in a gambit by the world's richest man, whose house of cards and castle of lies is no longer stable enough to really build on. That's it. If you support the content, check out the links down below, a special VPN deal for those interested, locals in Patreon, monthly memberships, the video sponsor, ground news, etc., and more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, question everything, and have a nice night.